If you keep outlining your screenplays before you even write them, you're never gonna be able to write a good story. But if you start doing what I'm gonna show you in this video, you'll discover why outlines are the one thing holding you back and how not writing one will actually make you a better writer. Why would you ever write a screenplay without an outline? To know that, it's important to understand what makes people love movies so much. Otherwise, you won't be able to write in a way that actually keeps your reader turning the page. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with Spider-Man, specifically the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. And if you disagree with that, I'm sorry, I can't be friends with you, like just go. Every year for Halloween, I dress up as Spider-Man. I mean, one year we went Halloween shopping and there were no Spider-Man costumes left. My parents and I, we must have gone to at least 5 different stores and then they just gave up. They were done. They weren't going to any more stores. Dude, I lost it. I mean, I was demanding that we keep going until we found a Spider-Man costume. I couldn't accept dressing up as anyone besides him because I just loved him too much. But why is that? Why do I want to be Spider-Man so bad that I'd throw a tantrum over not being able to wear his costume? I didn't watch Spider-Man 100 times because I thought it had an amazing dark night of the soul. I didn't even know what that meant. I just loved Peter Parker, you know, the regular guy trying to do the right thing. When people walk away from a movie, it's not the plot points or the technicalities that stick with them. It's the characters they connect with. They feel relatable and human. But why does this mean you shouldn't outline your story? This is actually the key to writing authentic characters. Imagine the characters are all little kids on Halloween. You know, they're me at 7 years old wanting to be Spider-Man, and the plot points are other costumes. It's like forcing a kid to wear a costume they hate. Like, sure, you can stuff them into it, but they'll never really feel like the character. The same thing happens when you force a character into a plot point that doesn't fit. Your story may follow the outline, but it will feel empty because the character no longer belongs in the role that you've written for them. You might decide that at the climax, your character kills somebody, only as you go through the story, once the climax comes, you find out he's not actually a killer. But now you're screwed, right? I mean, you spend all this time on the outline. You were hell-bent on following it to a T. Obviously, you don't want to dive into a story completely blind though, right? You've got to know something about what happens. How are you supposed to do this without an outline?
It's about character, and the dialogue just comes out of the character. And I don't lead the characters. I let the characters lead me.
So what does this actually mean? If you don't do this, your story will just fall flat and no one will be riveted enough by your characters to even get through half of it. They say the entire human population is like 99.99999% the same, but it's that tiny 0.0001% difference that makes us unique, and this little difference is all you need to write compelling characters. It's also the most important thing that will drive your story forward. Since we're talking about Tarantino, let's look at Pulp Fiction. And yeah, by the way, spoiler alert, but you know, the movie's 30 years old, so I think we're past that. On the surface, Vince and Jules, they just want to deliver the briefcase to Marcellus Wallace. That's it. What makes the story interesting is that all the other characters want their own thing too. Like Pumpkin and Honey Bunny want money. I didn't mean for that to rhyme. Butch, he just wants his watch back. It's the fact that each character's goal gets in the way of someone else's. In other words, they have conflicting goals. To keep your story engaging, make sure all your characters have a goal and that those goals create conflict with each other. But how do you do this? I'll show you that in a minute. But first, if you don't also add this other element to your characters, they won't have the depth to actually create an impactful story. When Vincent shoots Marvin in the face, is it really an accident? I mean, he's casually holding a gun, pointing it at his face. What did he think was gonna happen? Jules, on the other hand, becomes so opposed to violence that he actually lets Pumpkin and Honey Bunny escape in the end. I'm sorry, Honey Bunny, who names their character? The difference between Vince and Jules is that Vince lives in the moment. He treats violence as just another part of the job. But Jules, he starts questioning the morality of everything they're doing. And that difference changes everything. Vince gets shot dead by Butch, while Jules manages to walk away from this life completely. This is what makes Pulp Fiction Pulp Fiction. Each character has their own agenda, their own perspective on life, and this is what creates the story. The conflict comes not just from what they want, but but who they are. Even though Vincent and Jules are technically on the same team with the same goal, their beliefs are completely different, and that's what causes them to handle their goals in opposite ways, leading to very different outcomes. So when you're writing your screenplay, remember, it's not only about giving your characters different goals. Give them different beliefs. Let those beliefs shape how they go after these goals. This is what's going to make them come to life. But how do you apply this to your own writing? Instead of worrying about the midpoint, the climax, or the grand finale, focus on your characters' goals and their beliefs. That's what moves the story forward. Ask yourself, what do all my characters want? And what do they believe? Once you know that, the story is just gonna write itself. How do you make these conflicting goals drive your story? The way I do it is by following this simple process. Let's say you come up with a character whose goal is to rob a bank. How do we create tension and conflict with just a few other characters? I can think of like 3 off the top of my head. First, you have the bank teller who just wants to keep everyone inside safe. And then you have the cops whose goal is to capture the bank robber. Finally, well, you have the bank robber. The bank robber just wants the money. Now we've created conflict. But if you want that conflict to resonate with the audience, you still gotta go deeper. Your characters need unique beliefs that shape how they pursue their goals. For example, maybe the robber believes the system is unfair and the bank's money belongs to him. On the other hand, the teller, let's call him Sam, he believes that human life is more important than money. So he's willing to lose some cash if it means saving some people's lives. Finally, the cop just values law and order. He sees his role as a protector of society and wants to bring the robber to justice. These beliefs make their actions feel more authentic and meaningful. Think about your own script. Start with a clear goal for the main character, then create other characters with goals that get in the way of that main goal. But don't stop there. Give each character a belief that drives how they pursue these goals. The more layered this conflict is, the more depth you bring to your story. By layering conflicting goals and beliefs, your characters are so much more relatable and your audience stays engaged. But obviously, when you write this way, your story, it's probably not going to be very coherent, right? So why in the world would anyone want to do this? Writing without an outline can be likened to putting a Lego set together without actually knowing what the final image looks like. You know, you start with maybe a rough idea as you start to figure out all the first pieces, but the more you progress, the clearer it becomes what you're making. As it takes shape, it turns into something that you probably never even imagined until you got there. Writing without an outline, it's exactly the same thing. You might have an idea for your story when you start out, but as you get further into it, it unfolds in ways you probably never planned out. Even if you only keep 10% of your first draft, that 10% may be the core of your story that you never would have come up with if you didn't write the other 90% around it. At some point, you are gonna have to apply structure and plot points to your screenplay. So how do you do this without the danger of forcing your characters into a corner? One of the most famous songwriters of all time is Paul McCartney from the Beatles. And if you don't know who he is, I'm done. I'm leaving. Goodbye. I can't talk to you. He came up with one of the greatest melodies of all time in his sleep. He woke up with it in his head and he immediately went to play it on the piano. And then he went to go eat breakfast and he came up with this song.
Scrambled eggs. Lady, how I love your skinny legs. Not as much as I love scrambled eggs. Oh, I should eat some scrambled eggs. Scrambled egg.
He actually wrote this down, but obviously those weren't going to be the actual lyrics for any song he produced. But if he never wrote these bad lyrics down, he might never have come up with Yesterday as the song it became. This allowed him to come back to the song later with fresh eyes. He knew the melody was strong, and now that he had it down, he could take as much time as he wanted to actually write good lyrics. Creativity of any kind, it's always gonna start off messy. If you want to get down something good, you need to get down something bad first. The horrible first draft you write just exists so that you can come back later and turn it into a good second draft. When you come back, that's when you apply Save the Cat, Story Circle, or whatever structure you want later on, after you've gotten your vomit draft down on the paper. But maybe you start writing and you get stuck. You know, you can't figure out how to implement these goals and beliefs into the story in a way that actually contributes to your character's dialogue. Well, if you want the secret on how to do this, all you need to do is watch this video here.